So I know I'm late on this, but I've wanted to talk just a bit about Baan, the anime short film by well-known anime content creator Gigguk, ever since it was released a few weeks ago. So, between his request for people to react to and review it, and the fact that this is both a massive achievement for him personally and a noteworthy moment in the online anime sphere, I felt it was worth yapping about it for a few minutes. But before I get into the review of the anime itself, it's worth spending a minute or two talking about the project, well, as a project, and while I feel it may be significant beyond just being an enjoyable piece of fiction. Oops, I guess I regularly spoiled my review. But anyway, as I'm sure most of you know, Gigguk, aka Garnt Manitafo, is one of the biggest names in the sphere of anime content creators on YouTube. And even if you've never watched a video of his, you've probably encountered a meme or something that spawned from one of his videos over the years. And now, well, he's achieved something that he, and many others in the anime content creator sphere, have dreamed of for years, and created his own anime, specifically an anime short film. It is worth noting that while he did work with real anime industry professionals on the project, it was almost entirely self-funded, which is part of why it was as short as it was, since making anime is very expensive. But this probably allowed him to have a greater level of control over the project, and its distribution. He was determined to release it on a YouTube channel. So despite the massive expense, one which he has said he does not expect to make back, I can understand why he went with that route. This is obviously a noteworthy moment, having a content creator not native to Japan putting out something through a legit Japanese anime studio, which, whether you like the concept or not, is that it is a sort of proof of concept, both for Gigguk himself and for the concept of foreigner-written anime being something potentially seen by those in the anime industry as potentially viable from a business perspective. Of course, that may depend, at least in part, on how well Baan does as a video. Of course, this sort of attention, should Japanese studios decide it might be worth opening up to foreign-written and concepted anime, brings with it the risks of anything becoming more widespread. Gatekeep your hobbies is a common phrase nowadays for a reason, after all. I don't think any of us wants to see a future where every content creator with a large enough audience just gets to make an anime since the studio is sure it'll make them enough money. But there are other creators out there of various sizes who, like Gigguk, are genuine fans of anime and have ideas that are worth getting a chance to become something more than that, whether through self-funding, crowdfunding, or more traditional sponsorship, or deal with the studio directly. Anime is becoming more and more of a global thing, whether we like it or not. So supporting better people getting involved in that may well be the best way to gatekeep the people we really don't want from pushing their way into the industry. Also, as Gigguk mentioned in one of his videos talking about the project, part of the reason he insisted on releasing Baan on YouTube was to show that this sort of accessible anime release, without heavily relying on a third party like Crunchyroll, is viable. Japan has already been dipping their toes into this sort of release method, as anime like Uma Musume Cinderella Grey has been being released officially on YouTube. But another successful example of that could help show the studios that it can lead to success while keeping things accessible to those of us overseas. But enough about the meta-narrative surrounding the project. Let's get to the main event and talk a bit about Baan itself, and whether it's good or not. Obviously this will include spoilers, and I really would encourage you to check it out yourself first. It's less than 20 minutes long including the credits, so not even as long as a typical anime episode, and thus not a big time investment. So, in what was probably a surprise to no one familiar with Gigguk and his usual content, his anime is an isekai. Though of course it should be noted that basically all of the haha of course Gigguk made an isekai anime jokes are really just a meme, given that the type of isekai setup and story he's telling in Baan is quite different from the generic power fantasy isekai people are tired of and love to poke fun at. Here the isekai element is really just a metaphor for moving a significant distance away from the home you grew up in. So basically it's an immigrant story. One that's obviously personal for Gigguk himself, given that his parents immigrated to the UK from Thailand, and he has lived in a variety of distant places throughout his life, including the UK, Thailand, and most recently Japan. And it's also something that many of us can relate to as well, whether that's simply moving a state or two over in the US from your family, or if you, like me, moved over 1,000 miles away from New York, where I grew up, to Israel. Cross-world travel in the world of Baan is facilitated by a large tower that seemingly can send people between the worlds at will. No different, in essence, than we might take an overseas flight. It's not clear if it's quite that simple, of course, and it's also not completely clear if direct communication between the worlds is possible. But going back and forth seems to be very much an option. In this story, we focus on two characters, whose stories, we later learn, are actually intertwined. Daichi, a young man from Japan, and Rin, a non-human inhabitant of the fantasy world Euthania. Daichi is clearly a guy somewhat frustrated with his life and lack of direction, and so he goes to the other world to find one, making a complete or near complete break with his family and everything in Japan and on Earth in the process. By contrast, Rin, at least as far as we know early on in the story, travels to Earth both because she doesn't want to feel like a burden, and because she also wants to experience something different than the life and world she knew. So she sets off on her own. The biggest strength, I think, of the story and theme is that throughout these two stories, it shows two of the very real potential outcomes of leaving the nest, so to speak, and traveling far from home and family to a new life. For some, like Daichi, it works out, and you find the place you were meant to settle in and live out your life. But for others, like Rin, this sort of long-distance travel teaches you just how great the place you left behind was, and leads to an understanding that you were in the right place all along. Such as it here, as we see a homesick Rin, despite enjoying some things on Earth, choosing to return home, while Daichi is happily settled on Euthania, and as we later learn, once the reveal intertwines both stories, has adopted Rin as his daughter after her parents were killed protecting some sort of magical dragon egg. We also have the background subplot of the older Euthanian woman, who Daichi first met there, and who later came to Earth herself, got married, and settled there, thus giving us a third version of the immigrant story, so to speak. All in all, it's a really wholesome little story. Bonus points if you notice Rin giving the cell phone, on which Daichi had left a message for her when the time was right, to Daichi's parents before she goes back, presumably with a message from him indicating that he hasn't forgotten them. He's still making his father's curry after all, about the importance of home, family, and figuring out where that is. So is Baan some sort of instant classic or anything like that? No, not really, but it, like the vast majority of anime and other shows out there, it never needed to be. Garnt had a simple story to tell, and he did so really nicely, especially considering that I don't think he has a ton of experience writing fiction. Add to that some gorgeous animation, solid direction, and a great score by Kevin Penkin. It pays to have connections after all. And you have an anime short that very much deserves to stand among the other fall anime releases. It's ultimately a triumph for Gigguk, whether or not he makes his money back, or if it does anything more with his setting, and by extension a triumph for the medium, I think. I know I'd be happy to watch something else set in this world he created here, and there's definitely room for many more stories both with these characters and in the world of Baan at large. So what do you guys think of Baan? And would you be interested in some other story following these characters, or just anything else in this setting? I'd also like to hear what you have to say about this potentially, eventually, making Japanese anime studios more open to taking a chance on stories crafted outside of Japan. We're seeing a bit more of that in the creative sphere over there, such as with the J Novel Club contest for English light novels, and publishing the winners after all, so it's clear that they are considering this beyond just this one instance with Gigguk here. There are obviously both pros and cons regarding this hypothetical, of course, so I really look forward to hearing what you all think. Now, I might not have an anime project of my own coming anytime soon, but I do have my own original light novels, as well as the first volume of my manga that is slowly but surely being completed. So give that a look. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss any future uploads. That's all for now, so until next time.